Commander, the cubs are trying to drag the human to medical, and they won't stop screaming. Vrishen's secondary heart seized. In 2 centuries of colony operations, the nursery cubs had never exhibited full distress vocalizations. She was moving before her conscious mind processed the implications, her claws skidding on the polished floor as she bolted toward the nursery bay. The security feed materialized on her wrist display, and what she saw made her blood crystallize. All 6 cubs, every single juvenile in their care, had formed a tight circle around the human. Their fur stood on end, their tails lashed in synchronized panic, and their mouths were open in continuous distress calls that her species only made when witnessing imminent death. And in the center of that protective circle sat Layla, cross-legged on the floor, holding what appeared to be a small white container with a red symbol on its side. The human looked completely calm. "What is her injury status?" Vrishen demanded, her vocal cords vibrating with command harmonics that made every officer in earshot snap to attention. "That's the problem, Commander." The security officer's ears were flat against his skull. "Our scanners show nothing. No elevated stress hormones, no pain indicators, no tissue damage. But the cubs, I can see what the cubs are doing." Vrishen watched as the largest cub, little Nixva, grabbed the human's sleeve in her jaws and pulled. The human just laughed, and gently extracted her arm. "Get me Quilin, now." The xenobiologist arrived in less than 30 seconds, her breathing rapid. She took one look at the security feed and her crest flattened completely against her skull. "Blessed ancestors. Explain this to me." Vrishen kept her voice level despite the ice spreading through her chest. "Cubs don't make mistakes about injuries. They can detect cellular damage before our best medical scanners. If they're reacting like this, then something is catastrophically wrong with the human. Yes." Quilin's fingers flew across her datapad. "But Commander, look at Layla's biosigns. Baseline normal. Slightly elevated amusement markers, actually. She thinks this is funny." Vrishen watched the smallest cub, Jixi, attempt to knock the white container out of Layla's hands with her paw. The human intercepted the movement, tucking the box against her chest. "What is she holding?" "According to our database, it's called a medical kit. Standard human first aid supplies." Quilin pulled up an image. Bandages, antiseptic solutions, pain medication, various wound treatment implements. So she is injured. Relief flooded through Vrishen's system. Cubs were responding appropriately to genuine threat. They could sedate the human, treat whatever was wrong, calm the juveniles. "No, Commander." Quilin's voice was hollow. "She's not injured. She's organizing the supplies. Listen." The audio feed crackled to life. Layla's voice came through, clearly, warm and confused. "Guys, I'm fine. Really. I'm just checking if we need to reorder anything. See? Just counting bandages. 1, 2, 3. Nixva, sweetie, I can't count if you're standing on my lap." The largest cub ignored her completely, pressing her muzzle against Layla's neck, sniffing frantically. The distress calls continued unabated. "She's not injured," Vrishen said slowly. "But she's holding injury treatment supplies." "Yes. And the cubs are interpreting this as an emergency." "Yes." Quilin's crest rippled with distress. "Commander, we have a bigger problem. The cubs' stress levels are entering the critical zone. If they maintain this state for another 8 minutes, their neural pathways will begin forming permanent trauma responses. We could be looking at psychological damage that affects their entire adult lives." Vrishen's claws extended involuntarily. "Can we remove the human? The cubs won't let anyone near her. Watch." Quilin tapped a command, and the feed switched to show a medical technician approaching the nursery door. The moment it opened, 3 cubs whirled toward the entrance, their juvenile growls somehow more terrifying than any adult vocalization. The technician retreated immediately. "They think she's dying," Vrishen realized. "They've gone into protective mode. Anyone approaching is a potential threat to their injured packmate." "Exactly." And we can't sedate the cubs without risking their development. The chemicals we'd need could permanently alter their neurochemistry at this age. On the screen, Layla was attempting to stand up. All 6 cubs immediately moved to block her, their bodies forming a living barrier. Okay, I'll sit back down. Sheesh, you guys are being really weird today. She doesn't understand why they're upset. Vrishan felt her own stress hormones spiking. Can we communicate with her through the intercom? We've been trying. She responds, but every time she explains she's not injured, the cubs get more agitated. It's as if her words contradict what they're detecting. Vrishan watched Jixi attempt to push the medical kit away with both paws. Layla held it closer, and the cub's distress vocalization jumped an octave. Cubs are never wrong about injuries, Qilan whispered. In 50,000 years of documented evolution, they've never given a false positive. Their detection abilities exceed our most sensitive medical equipment. If they say something is wrong, then something is wrong. Vrishan's mind raced. But what could they be detecting that our scanners can't? I don't know, Commander. But we have 6 minutes to figure it out before we lose these cubs to permanent psychological trauma. And, honestly? Qilan's voice cracked. I'm starting to think the cubs might be right. What if the human is injured, and we just can't detect it? What if whatever is wrong with her is so far outside our medical understanding that... Emergency beacon. An officer's voice cut through. Commander, the nursery has automatically triggered a distress beacon to Homeworld. The cubs' collective stress signatures have crossed the colony threat threshold. Vrishan closed her eyes. In 36 hours, Homeworld Command would receive a signal indicating that their newest colony was experiencing a crisis severe enough to threaten the psychological development of the next generation. They would demand explanations. She would have to tell them that a human female sitting calmly on the floor with a box of bandages had caused a catastrophic breakdown in their entire child-rearing system. Get me every specialist we have, Vrishan commanded. Behavioral experts, medical staff, anyone who studied human biology. We have 6 minutes to solve this, or we're going to have to explain to an entire planet why we can't keep their cubs safe around one unarmed, uninjured human with a first aid kit. On the screen, Layla was trying to explain something about being prepared, while Nixiva attempted to physically drag her across the floor. The other cubs joined in, 6 sets of jaws grabbing clothing, limbs, anything they could reach, all pulling toward the medical bay. The human was laughing. The cubs were screaming. And nobody understood why. The first specialist arrived within 90 seconds, his scanning equipment already calibrated. Commander, requesting permission to perform remote bioscan on the human. Granted, whatever you can do without entering the nursery. The specialist positioned himself at the observation window, angling his scanner toward Layla. The device hummed, its sensor array glowing blue. On the screen, all 6 cubs' heads snapped toward the window simultaneously. What are they? The specialist's words died as Nixiva launched herself at the observation glass, her small body thudding against it with shocking force. The other cubs followed, forming a living wall between Layla and the scanner. They're blocking the scan. The specialist's voice rose in disbelief. They've positioned themselves to disrupt the sensor field. Commander, that's not possible. They're too young to understand scanning technology, let alone coordinate a defensive countermeasure. Vrishan watched as the cubs maintained their barrier, their bodies arranged with geometric precision. How young are they supposed to learn this behavior? Adolescence, maybe late juvenile stage at the earliest. These cubs are... He checked his datapad. These cubs shouldn't be capable of this for another 3 years minimum. Inside the nursery, Layla was waving at the window. Hey, is someone there? Can you tell these little guys I'm okay? They're being super protective today, and I don't know why. Qilan, standard calming protocols. Vrishan gestured toward the intercom. Now, the xenobiologist activated the nursery communication system and began the sequence that had soothed agitated cubs for generations. Low-frequency harmonics, specifically tuned to trigger juvenile relaxation responses. The sonic pattern that had never, in recorded history, failed to calm distressed young. The cubs didn't even turn around. "Increase amplitude," Vrishyn ordered. Quillen adjusted the settings. The harmonics intensified, filling the nursery with frequencies that should have made the cubs drowsy, pliant, ready for nap time. Jixie yawned, then immediately returned to pawing at Layla's hands, trying to prevent her from opening the medical kit. "They're ignoring it." Quillen's datapad slipped from her fingers. "Commander, they're ignoring the calming sequence. That's impossible." "Yes, add it to the list." Vrishyn activated her command channel. "Layla, can you hear me?" The human looked up, relief crossing her features. "Oh, thank goodness. Commander, I don't know what's going on. The cubs are acting really strange, and I can't calm them down. They keep trying to drag me somewhere, and every time I try to organize these supplies, they get more upset." "Layla, I need you to close the medical kit. Put it away. Out of sight." "Sure, okay. Let me just finish." "Now, don't finish anything. Close it immediately and place it on the floor away from you." Layla shrugged, snapping the kit shut. "Okay, done. Is that going to—" The distress vocalizations doubled in volume. Nixva seized the kit in her jaws and tried to pull it open. 2 other cubs joined her, their small claws scrabbling at the latches. The 3 smallest cubs surrounded Layla more tightly, their bodies pressed against hers, trembling visibly. "What the—" Layla reached for the kit. "Guys, stop! You're going to break it!" The screaming intensified to a pitch that made every adult's ears flatten involuntarily. She put it away, and they got worse. The medical specialist's voice was hollow. "Commander, what if the cubs think she needs the medical supplies? What if they're trying to get her to treat herself?" Vrishyn stared at the chaos unfolding on screen. "That would mean they detect an injury requiring immediate treatment. But our scans show nothing." "I know." The specialist's crest drooped. "But Commander, cubs don't make mistakes. If they think she's injured badly enough to need those supplies right now, then either our equipment is failing or human injuries present in ways we can't measure." Quillen pulled up comparative biology charts. "Look at this. Human cellular regeneration rates, immune response patterns, baseline inflammation markers. They're all elevated compared to most species we've documented. What if the cubs are detecting something that's normal for humans but reads as damaged to their senses?" "Food delivery," an officer announced. "The cubs' scheduled feeding time." Vrishyn watched as a small robot entered through the auxiliary door, carrying 6 bowls of nutrient-rich meat. The cubs' favorite meal, specifically designed for growing juveniles. None of them moved toward the food. "That's not possible," Quillen's voice cracked. "Cubs this age are food-motivated above all else. They should be abandoning everything to eat. Starvation response should override even protective instincts." But the cubs remained clustered around Layla, who was now trying to push bowls toward them. "Come on, guys. You love this stuff. Aren't you hungry?" Nixva grabbed a bowl and dragged it to Layla, pushing it against her leg. "They're trying to feed her," the specialist whispered. "They think she's too injured to get food herself." Layla laughed, pushing the bowl back. "That's sweet, but that's your food. I already ate lunch." The cub pushed it back, more insistently. The other cubs began bringing their bowls over, surrounding Layla with untouched food. 5 minutes, Quillen announced. 5 minutes until permanent neural pathway formation begins. Vrishyn's mind raced through scenarios. Sedate everyone and deal with developmental consequences. Remove the human by force and risk the cubs injuring themselves trying to protect her. Call in additional specialists and waste precious time. Commander. An officer's voice was tight with stress. The emergency beacon is now broadcasting at priority alpha. Homeworld Command will receive it in 35 hours. They'll expect a full incident report explaining why we signaled a colony-wide threat. On the screen, Nixva had positioned herself between Layla and the door. Her stance wide, her juvenile features twisted into an expression of adult, protective fury. The cub was half the size of a full-grown specimen, her movements still clumsy with youth, but her intent was unmistakable. She would fight anyone who approached. She would defend her packmate against any threat. How is she doing that? The specialist pointed at Nixva's posture. That's a defensive stance she shouldn't be able to execute for 3 more years. The muscle development alone. Stress-induced accelerated growth, Quillen suggested weakly. In 5 minutes. Impossible. Everything happening here is impossible. Vrishan's claws scraped against her console. Cubs ignoring calming protocols, cubs refusing food, cubs exhibiting advanced protective behaviors, all while the human they're protecting sits there completely healthy by every measure we have. Layla had opened the medical kit again. Maybe if I show them each item, like, see, this is just a bandage, it's not scary. She pulled out a small wrapped package. The cubs erupted into chaos. Jixie tried to knock it from her hand. Nixva grabbed Layla's wrist in her mouth, gently but firmly. The 3 smallest cubs began making a new sound, a high-pitched keening that Vrishan had only heard once before, when a cub had watched its parent die from predator wounds. They thought they were watching Layla die. 4 minutes, Quillen whispered. Commander, we're out of time. We need to make a choice. Sedate everyone, remove the human by force, or accept that we have no idea what's happening, Vrishan finished. And that terrifies me more than any option we have left. On screen, Layla was trying to comfort the cubs, her voice soft and confused, while they screamed their grief and terror into the sterile air of the nursery. The human was smiling. The cubs were breaking. And nobody knew why. The 3 senior behavioral specialists materialized on the screen in a priority conference call, their images projected from the Homeworld Research Institute. Each had spent decades studying cub development. Each had published numerous papers on juvenile perception capabilities. Each watched the security footage in complete silence. Finally, the eldest, Vinthar, whose crest had faded to silver with age, spoke. The cubs are not malfunctioning. Then what? Vrishan began. They are responding appropriately to genuine biochemical signatures of injury. Vinthar's voice carried absolute certainty. In 50,000 years of documented evolutionary history, cubs have never produced a false positive injury detection. Never. Their sensory capabilities exceed our understanding. They detect cellular damage at the molecular level, processing biochemical data that our most advanced scanners cannot measure. The second specialist, Vrishan, leaned forward. Commander, cubs don't just detect current injuries. They detect the potential for injury, the biochemical cascade that precedes tissue damage, the pre-inflammatory markers that appear before physical symptoms manifest. They are living predictive medical systems. But Layla shows no signs of, by our standards, no. The third specialist, Kixnall, pulled up comparative data. But what if human baselines are different? What if what reads as injury in progress to cubs is simply how humans exist? Quillen's eyes widened. You're saying humans might be constantly injured? Or constantly repairing damage? Or existing in a state that mimics injury closely enough that cubs cannot distinguish the difference? Vinthar gestured at the screen, where Layla was attempting to reason with Nixva. Look at her behavior. She carries injury treatment supplies with her, not in a medical facility, not in an emergency kit stored away. She has them on her person, readily accessible, as if she expects to need them, Vrishan added quietly. Vrishan felt ice spreading through her system. We need to ask her directly. Layla. The human looked up at the intercom. Yes, Commander? Why do you have that medical kit with you? Oh, this. Layla held up the white container while 6 cubs immediately tried to block her hands. It's just standard supplies. Every caretaker should have basic first aid stuff nearby when working with kids. But why? Are the cubs likely to injure themselves? Well, no, not really. Your species' young are pretty sturdy. Layla smiled. This is more just, in case. Preventive preparation. It's better to have supplies and not need them than to need them and not have them. Silence filled the command. Center. Preventive preparation, Quilen repeated slowly. Supplies for injuries that haven't happened yet, for theoretical future damage. Right, exactly. Layla's relief was evident. You get it. No, Vinthar said flatly. We do not get it. Our medicine is reactive. An injury occurs, we treat it. We do not prepare for hypothetical damage that may never manifest. Oh, Layla blinked. Really? But what if someone gets hurt and you don't have supplies nearby? Then we acquire them when needed. But that wastes time when… Layla paused. Wait, how often do your people get injured? Rarely, Brescian said. Perhaps once every few years for minor damage. Serious injuries are exceptional events. Layla's expression shifted to something between shock and confusion. Once every few years? But I get paper cuts, bruises, small burns, scrapes. I don't know. Maybe a few times a month? Sometimes weekly. The silence stretched longer this time. You injure yourself weekly, Brescian said carefully. And you consider this normal? I mean, yeah. That's pretty standard for humans. Nothing serious, just little things. Layla shrugged, and the cubs immediately pressed closer, as if the movement itself indicated damage. That's why we have first aid kits. Minor injuries are just part of life. Kicksnall made a choking sound. Part of life. Routine damage is part of your normal existence. Well, when you say it like that, it sounds dramatic. Layla laughed. But yeah, humans are kind of fragile compared to a lot of species. We bruise easily. Our skin tears pretty readily. We're susceptible to temperature damage, chemical irritation, impact trauma. That's why we prepare for it. Let me show you something. Layla reached into the medical kit. Like, this is just a simple bandage. See? You put it on cuts to keep them clean while they heal. She pulled out a wrapped adhesive strip. The nursery exploded. Nixva lunged forward, seizing the bandage from Layla's hand. The cub's movements were frantic, desperate, as she tried to unwrap the item with teeth and claws not designed for such fine manipulation. The other cubs swarmed closer, their vocalizations reaching a pitch that made the audio system crackle with distortion. Whoa! Hey, it's okay. Layla reached for the bandage. Nixva, sweetie, I don't need… The cub pressed the still-wrapped bandage against Layla's arm, then her leg, then her chest, searching for the wound. Certain that somewhere the human was bleeding, dying, desperately in need of this treatment tool she'd been trying to display. She thinks Layla is hemorrhaging internally, Quilen whispered. The cub detected injury markers, saw Layla reach for treatment supplies, and concluded the damage is so severe that the human is trying to address it herself. Jixie had grabbed another bandage. The smallest cubs were frantically nosing through the kit, pulling out items at random. Antiseptic wipes, gauze pads, medical tape, creating a debris field of human injury treatment supplies around Layla's increasingly confused form. Guys, I promise I'm not hurt. Layla gently extracted a tube of antibiotic ointment from a cub's mouth. These are just for emergencies, for if something happens. Not for right now. 2 minutes, Quilen announced, her voice hollow. 2 minutes until permanent psychological damage begins. Vinthar's image leaned forward, his ancient eyes fixed on the chaos. Commander, I believe we are witnessing a fundamental incompatibility between species. The cubs detect something in human biochemistry that reads as injury. The human confirms she experiences routine injury as a normal life condition. She carries treatment supplies in anticipation of inevitable damage. What are you saying? Brescian demanded. I'm saying that from the cub's perspective, Layla is a mortally wounded creature who somehow remains functional despite constant cellular damage. She is prey-level fragile, sustaining routine injuries that would be catastrophic for our species, yet exhibits none of the fear or vulnerability that should accompany such fragility. And most terrifying of all, Vinthar's crest flattened completely. She expects to be damaged. She prepares for it. She accepts routine injury as inevitable. Brescian's voice shook. No wonder the cubs are breaking. They're trying to protect a packmate who treats injury as a scheduled occurrence, who carries repair tools the way we carry identification, who speaks of damage in weekly increments as if discussing weather patterns. On screen, Nixova had managed to partially unwrap a bandage. She was attempting to apply it to Layla's forearm, pressing it against unblemished skin, searching desperately for the wound her senses insisted must exist. Layla gently peeled the bandage off. "Sweetie, I'm not bleeding. Look, see? No cuts." The cub keened, a sound of pure despair. She could detect the injury. She knew it was there. Why couldn't she find it? Why couldn't she help? 1:30, Quillen said. "Someone explain to me," Vrishen's voice was ice, "how we are supposed to integrate a species that exists in a constant state of damage with children who have evolved to detect and respond to injury with perfect accuracy. Because right now, it looks like those two facts cannot coexist without destroying one or both parties involved." Kixanal pulled up a data chart. "Commander, if what we're theorizing is correct, human baseline biochemistry includes markers for inflammation, cellular repair, minor tissue damage, and immune response that are always present at detectable levels. To our cubs, every human registers as currently injured and requiring intervention. And the medical kit made it worse because it confirmed the cub's assessment," Vinthar finished grimly. "The human is injured, knows she's injured, and has prepared treatment supplies for when the damage becomes critical. From the cub's perspective, Layla has been sitting there slowly dying, calmly organizing the tools she'll need when her condition deteriorates beyond her ability to ignore it." Inside the nursery, Layla had finally stopped trying to explain. She simply sat, allowing the cubs to press against her, to sniff her skin, to search frantically for wounds that her species carried at the cellular level but would never display on the surface. 1 minute, Quillen whispered. "We're out of time." Quillen's crest suddenly stood straight up. Wait, Commander, pull up Layla's cellular scan from her intake physical. We don't have time for— Do it, now, please." Vrishen forwarded the data. Quillen's fingers flew across her datapad, overlaying multiple readings, cross-referencing metabolic rates. "Oh, ancestors." Quillen's voice dropped to a whisper. "Look at this. Human cells divide continuously. Skin cells regenerate every few weeks, intestinal lining every few days. Blood cells constantly dying and being replaced. Their entire body is in perpetual turnover." "Most species have cellular regeneration," Vrishen said. "Not like this, not at this rate. Commander, humans damage and replace billions of cells daily through normal activity. Walking damages foot tissue. Eating damages digestive lining. Breathing exposes lung tissue to microabrasions. Their metabolism generates free radicals that cause continuous low-level cellular damage. They exist in a constant state of destruction and repair." Vinthar leaned forward on the screen. "And the cubs detect everything. The inflammation markers from cellular repair, the chemical signals of tissue regeneration, the immune responses to normal bacterial presence, the oxidative stress from basic metabolism." Quillen's voice rose with excitement and horror. "To cubs with molecular-level injury detection, every human registers as currently sustaining damage. Because they are. Always. It's not malfunction, it's accurate reporting of a species that literally cannot exist without continuous injury." Vrishen pulled up comparative data. "Our species has robust cellular structures. We sustain damage rarely. When we do, we heal completely before cells begin turnover cycles. But humans never stop being damaged." Kixanal finished. "They're too fragile to avoid routine cellular injury. So they evolved to function optimally while constantly repairing themselves. The cubs aren't wrong. Layla is injured. She's just supposed to be." 30 seconds, Quillen announced, then paused. "Wait. If we can't change what the cubs detect, we need to change what they think it means." Vrishen stared at the screen, watching Layla gently remove another bandage from Nixva's desperate grip. An idea crystallized. Layla, listen very carefully. I need you to do exactly as I say. Okay? The human's voice was cautious. There should be a practice mannequin in the storage compartment. Can you reach it without standing? Maybe? Layla stretched, the cubs immediately clustering tighter. She managed to hook a cabinet handle with her fingers, easing the door open. Got it. There's a dummy in here. Pull it out slowly. Keep explaining what you're doing to the cubs. Layla dragged the mannequin into view, a synthetic training form used to teach cubs about other species' anatomy. Hey guys, look. Remember this? We use it for learning games. The cubs' attention shifted fractionally. The distress calls continued, but several sets of eyes fixed on the mannequin. Now, Vrishan continued, take something from your medical kit, something visible, and use it on the mannequin while explaining clearly that these supplies are for other individuals, not for yourself. Understanding bloomed across Layla's features. Oh, that's smart. She grabbed a wrapped bandage. Okay, guys, watch this. See this bandage? This is for pretend injuries. Like if someone else got hurt, I would help them. Watch. She unwrapped the adhesive strip with exaggerated movements. So if this dummy scraped its knee, she pressed the bandage against the mannequin's leg. I would put a bandage on the dummy's scraped knee, not on me, on others. The kit is for helping others. Nixiva's distress vocalization stuttered, broke, reformed at a lower pitch. That's right, sweetie. Layla pulled out another bandage, applied it to the mannequin's arm. See, medical supplies for external use, for when other people need help, not because I'm hurt. The other cubs began to quiet, their attention riveted on the demonstration. Layla continued, pulling out item after item, narrating each one's purpose for treating hypothetical injuries on other individuals. Antiseptic wipes for cleaning someone else's scrape, gauze for covering another person's wound, pain medication for when someone else experiences discomfort. I'm not injured, Layla repeated gently, applying a fourth bandage to the now thoroughly treated mannequin. I'm prepared to help others if they get injured. Big difference. The distress vocalizations had dropped to uncertain whimpers. The cubs watched, their small minds processing this new information. The medical kit was not evidence of Layla's deteriorating condition. It was a tool for external injury management. But Jixie remained pressed against Layla's side, nose working continuously. The cub could still detect the baseline injury signals. They hadn't disappeared. They understand the kit now, Quilen observed, but they can still sense her cellular damage state. They're confused why she's not treating herself. Layla, Vrishan said carefully, you need to explain to them that what they're detecting is normal for humans, that you're supposed to feel this way to them. Layla looked uncertain. I don't know what they're detecting. Cellular damage, continuous minor injury from normal metabolic processes. Your species exists in a constant state of repair that reads as injured to their senses. Oh, Layla processed this. So basically, I'm always registering as slightly broken to them. Essentially, yes. Huh. Okay. Layla gently stroked Nixiva's head. Guys, I know I might feel hurt to you, but this is normal for humans. We're kind of fragile, and our bodies are always fixing little problems. It's supposed to be like this. I'm healthy. This is what healthy looks like for my species. Nixiva made a small, uncertain sound. She pressed her muzzle against Layla's hand, sniffing deeply, processing. The injury markers were still there, but the human wasn't seeking treatment, wasn't showing pain behaviors, was, in fact, completely calm. Slowly, the largest cub settled onto the floor, positioning herself against Layla's leg, still vigilant, still monitoring, but accepting, provisionally, that this strange, fragile creature operated under different rules. The other cubs followed, forming a protective circle. Their distress calls had stopped, but their attention remained locked on Layla, bodies tense, ready to respond if her condition changed. Vital signs normalizing, Quilen reported. We're past the critical threshold. No permanent damage to neural pathways. Vrishan felt her secondary hearts restart. Vinthar, we need new protocols, immediately. The senior specialist nodded. All human medical supplies must be clearly marked for external use. Storage containers should be transparent or labeled. Cubs need regular reassurance that human baseline injury signals are normal operating parameters. And, Commander, Vinthar's expression was grave. We need to inform Homeworld Command that we've integrated a species that will always register as damaged to our young. This changes everything about how we approach human-cub interactions. Inside the nursery, Layla had resumed organizing the medical kit, now explaining each item's external purpose as she worked. The cubs watched intently, still protective, still concerned, but no longer panicked. They had learned something impossible. Some species were supposed to be broken. The revised protocols appeared in every terminal across the colony within 8 hours. Human Integration, Amendment 3.7. Baseline Injury, State Documentation. All personnel are advised that human biochemistry registers continuous cellular damage markers consistent with active injury states. This is normal species function. Medical intervention is not required unless human exhibits distress behaviors or requests assistance. Cubs will detect these baseline injury signals indefinitely. Reassurance protocols attached. Vrishan watched as Quilen uploaded the training modules directly into the nursery education system. Holographic displays materialized, showing cartoon humans surrounded by small indicators labeled normal damage, typical repair cycle, expected cellular turnover. Humans are always slightly broken, Quilen narrated into the recording system. This is normal. This is healthy. They are supposed to be this way. The 6 cubs sat in a semicircle, watching the educational program with intense focus. Nixiva's tail twitched every time the cartoon human's injury markers flashed, but she remained in place, absorbing the new information. Across the colony, medical teams updated their databases. Under Layla's species file, a new designation appeared: Perpetual Minor Injury Species, Stable Condition. Continuous cellular damage and repair cycle normal for optimal function. Do not attempt intervention unless explicitly requested. The report to Homeworld Command took Vrishan 3 hours to compose. She kept it factual, clinical, and tried very hard not to convey her lingering disbelief. We have successfully integrated a species that exists in a constant state of cellular damage that our cubs detect as ongoing injury. Human baseline biochemistry includes inflammation markers, tissue repair signals, and immune responses at levels that would indicate medical emergency in our species. Cubs' injury detection systems are functioning correctly. Humans are simply injured continuously by design. The response came back within a day, not from standard colonial administration, but from the Homeworld Scientific Council, requesting full biological data on humans. A species that functions optimally while sustaining continuous damage represents unprecedented evolutionary adaptation. Permission granted to establish long-term observation protocols. This changes our understanding of viable biological strategies. In the nursery, Layla had returned to her regular duties. She moved through the space with practiced ease, her voice warm as she guided the cubs through their afternoon activities. Okay, guys, who wants to practice the counting game? All 6 cubs raised their paws, but Nixiva didn't move from her position at Layla's side. None of them did. They maintained close proximity, their formation loose but deliberate. You know I'm fine, right? Layla laughed, ruffling Nixiva's fur. You don't have to guard me constantly. The cub made a small chirping sound that Vrishan had learned meant, we know, but we're staying anyway. I actually got a paper cut yesterday, Layla mentioned casually, holding up her index finger. Stupid filing system caught my... 6 cubs materialized around her in synchronized formation, their bodies forming a protective barrier, their eyes locked on her finger. Nixiva gently took Layla's hand in her paws, examining the digit with intense scrutiny. It's already healed. See? It was tiny. Didn't even need a bandage. Layla displayed her unmarked skin. "24 hours ago, guys. It's gone." The cubs inspected her finger from multiple angles, sniffed it thoroughly, confirmed the absence of active damage. Then, slowly, they relaxed back into casual proximity rather than defensive formation. "They're never going to stop being protective," Quillen observed from the monitoring station. "No," Vrishan agreed. "They've accepted that she's supposed to register as damaged, but their instincts still demand they stay alert for escalation." In the nursery, Layla had pulled out a new medical kit, this one in a transparent container with bold labels reading, "For external use, not injured," in multiple languages. She began organizing supplies while explaining each item's purpose. "This is antiseptic, for cleaning other people's cuts. This is gauze, for covering other people's scrapes. These are painkillers, for when someone else has a headache." The cubs watched with rapt attention. Their bodies remained slightly tense, ready to intervene if necessary. But they no longer panicked. They understood now. Humans were fragile. Humans sustained routine damage. Humans carried repair supplies because injury was inevitable for their species. And somehow, impossibly, humans were fine. Nixova settled against Layla's leg, her warmth a constant reminder of vigilance. Jixi positioned herself on the other side. The 4 smaller cubs arranged themselves in a loose perimeter. "You guys are the best, you know that?" Layla's voice was soft with affection. "Thanks for caring about me, even if I am the fragile one." The cubs made contented sounds. Their senses still registered the injury markers, the cellular damage, the continuous repair processes, the biochemical signals that screamed, "Wounded creature requires assistance." But they had learned something their species had never needed to understand before. Some beings were supposed to be broken. Some species operated successfully while technically damaged. Some creatures carried their fragility as naturally as others carried strength. Outside the nursery, Vrishan finalized her daily report. Tomorrow, 3 more human caretakers would arrive. The cubs would need to learn this lesson again, repeated across every human they encountered. A species that technically never stopped being injured had joined a civilization whose children could detect injury with perfect accuracy. And somehow, against every instinct and expectation, they would make it work. Because the cubs' detection systems weren't wrong, and the humans weren't dying. Both things were true simultaneously. The universe, Vrishan reflected, was stranger than any of them had imagined. Inside the nursery, Layla closed the transparent medical kit and set it in its designated storage location. The cubs watched until the container was secure, then returned to their afternoon activities, playing and learning and growing. But Nixova never moved more than 2 body lengths from the human, just in case.